You're listening to Boomers Today with your host, Frank Sampson.
Well, welcome to Boomers Today. I'm your host, Frank Sampson. Of course, each week we bring you very important and useful information on issues facing baby boomers, their parents, and other loved ones. And I can't thank you all enough, which I thank you each and every show, because our listeners are growing all the time, every day. And we're growing organically because of all of you. So many of you listen to particular shows and share it, or episodes, and share it with friends and family. And some of you just send the entire Boomers Today app over to everybody. You can listen to it. Many of you listen to it on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spreaker, Stitcher, basically pretty much any one of your favorite podcast stations. So thank you all for that. But I do know why you share shows with everybody. It's because we have the best guests ever, and the very, very knowledgeable and educational, and certainly not going to disappoint you today, because we have with us two guests. Sarah Hill is with East Bay Doula for the dying, and as an end-of-life doula, Sarah provides support to those who are dying and their constellation of caregivers. Also, we have Linda Suhr. Linda is with Autumn of Life Planning, and after caring for her partner on his journey with Alzheimer's disease and peaceful death at home, Linda discovered her calling as an end-of-life doula. So Sarah and Linda, thank you so much for joining us on Boomers Today. I really, really appreciate it.
Thanks for having us, Frank.
Yeah, so I'm going to throw out the questions. I'm going to let the two of you kind of work out who's going to answer. But, I think, when before I heard about your type of a service, I thought of a doula. My daughter actually is in a field in working with young moms and moms to be, and so when I thought of a doula, I thought of a doula who's providing support to a mother about to have a baby. But this is an end-of-life doula, right? So talk to us about what an end-of-life doula does.
Okay, this is Linda, and thank you. First of all, thank you for having us. We're so excited to let people know about end-of-life doulas, because a lot of people don't even know about them, let alone what we do. So we're excited to spread the word. And you're right, Frank, a lot of people know about birth doulas, and we like to say we're at the other gate. We're at the end of life. End-of-life doulas, I'll just tell you the nutshell, and then maybe we can go into more detail. But the nutshell version is where we provide non-medical support to those who are dying and to their families and close friends and maybe chosen families. And we discuss their wishes and their current situation, their challenges, and what they would like to accomplish as they're dying or before they die. And we tailor a plan to help them achieve whatever it is they want to achieve. And believe it or not, there are options that people have as they are dying. So we want to make sure they know about what their options are. And we provide emotional support and spiritual support and practical support. We coordinate also with hospice and others on the client's care team to hopefully bring as peaceful of passing as possible. And one of the first things that we start with is we talk about we do pre-planning for the end of life. And if they haven't done a health directive, then we can talk to them about what their wishes are for their medical care and what they would want and what they would not want. So that's important. And we help them organize some of those things so that the families can be sort of families. You know, they can be in their role as parent, child, or spouse, or brother or sister, and not have to worry about some of these more detail-y kinds of things.
So I'm going to take a stab at this, but correct me if I'm wrong. I mean, you both know, you know, in the business of working with families to, you know, find the right place to live and get proper care, you know, well before you know, somebody like you get involved. But, you know, we always stress for people to plan. But, you know, I would say most of our situations, they're crisis situations. They got to move, they, you know, not safe at home, or they, you know, whatever, they're being discharged from a hospital. And it's always like, all right, we got to find a place quickly. All right. In yours type of service, is it similar? I mean, is it do most people plan and they want to start having those conversations, or it's like, hey, they've been given, you know, a challenging diagnosis where they may only have a short time to live, and that's when you're brought in?
Yeah, I think this is Sarah. I think that's a great question, Frank. And ideally for us, you know, we want to get to people as far upstream from a crisis as we can. As you can imagine, it makes things easier, but sometimes that's not possible. So it's not uncommon for doulas to be engaged at any point, whether it's upstream from a terminal diagnosis, just to go through advanced planning, as Linda was discussing. And sometimes we're called in right at vigil when active dying is occurring. Doulas will come into an ICU environment. We will come into the home or into a facility and sit vigil with somebody who is actively dying. I have sometimes met clients really at that point of their lives. So there are no set rules on that. I think it's just the comfort level for the dying person as to when they feel ready to engage.
So you mentioned, I think it was Linda, I think, mentioned, I don't know who, I don't remember who spoke first, doesn't matter, but mentioned,
Okay.
hospice, and you work together with hospice. So maybe explain that a little bit more, and then maybe we'll get into some additional services that you provide. But first of all, maybe, again, I would think a lot of our listeners understand what hospice is, but maybe you could explain hospice and then your role and how you work together.
Okay, this is Linda, and
Right.
Hospice is wonderful, and it can provide, when someone has a diagnosis, a serious terminal diagnosis with a prognosis of living 6 months or less, then they become eligible for hospice care. And for those who are boomers, 65 and over, that's covered by Medicare. So there's no cost to the person. And hospice provides a doctor. So when you're on hospice, you're no longer connected with your previous healthcare system. You're now on the hospice. You have a hospice doctor and nurse who comes and visits. And the nurse will come for an hour or so and take your vitals and talk to you about what your needs are and where you are. And if you have pain, they'll provide medication for that. Hospice also provides a social worker who comes and helps the person and the family with their kinds of needs. And they also provide a chaplain to provide support for spiritual needs. And they'll provide a caregiver for a brief time. For example, if someone needs help with bathing and showering, they'll an aide, a hospice aide, will come and do that for them. And it's a wonderful thing. The difference for what we can provide is that we can come for a longer period of time. And so we can come, as Sarah mentioned, sitting vigil, meaning if the person is very, very ill and in their bed, we can sit with the person who's dying while the primary caregiver, the spouse or child or whoever it is, can take a little break, but we can do that for a longer period of time, and we have more flexibility in our scheduling. The difference is we're not covered by Medicare, but we always try to work out some kind of arrangement as best we can with payment, or sometimes we do pro bono work. But that's how we collaborate, and we really are in close communication with our hospice friends, because they're such a vital part of the care team. Got it.
Well, it certainly sounds like a needed and wonderful service. How do, obviously we're trying to do our part here and getting the word out on end-of-life doulas. I think it's as I say, a wonderful service, but where are most of your clients coming from? Referrals, or how do people hear about you?
I would say that oftentimes we're found through word of mouth and referrals, whether through clients of ours that had positive experiences, the family members and friends who saw us at work and know of others who may need our services. And then certainly our medical clinicians refer us as well for added support. As Linda was saying with the hospice team, it's really about just getting a good continuum of care together. And what I wanted to add to what she was sharing is just, the nurse who comes out to visit for, say, an hour or so a week. I think a lot of people hold in their mind's eye that, when hospice is coming in, they're going to be there 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and that's just not how they're structured. So having that added support of a doula, as Linda was saying, who can come with perhaps a greater degree of flexibility to stay longer if needed. But I would say that most people find us through referrals, but there's also organic web search. We've had plenty of clients who will report that they had heard about an end-of-life doula in a podcast such as this, or on some other programming, and got curious about it and just did a web search. And then we have national organizations as well, NEDA, the National End-of-Life Doula Association, and then INELDA, the International End-of-Life Doula Association, NEDA is National End-of-Life Doula Alliance, and they are excellent resources. So if people are curious, they can go and Google NEDA or INELDA and find directories that will take them to doulas in their local geographies.
Gotcha. Great. Thank you for that information. We're going to take a real quick break, I promise, just to recognize our sponsor. And we come back, certainly give you the opportunity to share, your information. And, what I'd like to talk about, so I'll give you a little bit of time to think, is certainly without giving any names, but just maybe some, positive impact you've had with various clients, and maybe just some examples that you could share. It's always, storytelling is always a great one, and even though somebody is dying, sometimes there's some positive stories that come out of that. So maybe we could talk a little bit about that when we come back. All right. So my question to all of you is, do you know anyone who may be concerned about an older driver? Well, Senior Care Authority's Beyond Driving with Dignity program is a facilitated self-assessment program for older drivers. This program has been designed to serve as a vital tool to facilitate older drivers and their families as they make the appropriate decisions regarding the future of one's safe driving career. If the individual is a safe driver, an advisor will provide him or her with strategies on how to remain a safe driver as they progress through the aging process. If driving retirement is the appropriate decision, then the individual and their family are offered possible alternatives, resources, and a specific plan to ensure a smooth and successful transition from the driver's seat to the passenger seat. So to learn more, you could go to www.beyonddrivingwithdignity.com or call 877-907-8841 to connect with a senior care authority advisor in your area. We have, going back, we have with us Sarah Hill and Linda Suhr, who are end-of-life doulas, and we're learning a lot about that and what a wonderful service it is. So maybe each of you, whoever wants to go first, I'll say Sarah, why don't you go first, and then Linda, and just, you know, how people could get a hold of you. Commercial time. Go ahead and let them know how they can learn more.
Thanks, Frank. So my name is Sarah Hill, as you all now know us, and I am with East Bay Doula for the Dying, is my private practice. And I can be reached via my website, which is eastbaydoulaforthedying.com. And I am also affiliated with a group called the Bay Area End-of-Life Doula Alliance, and we operate out of the Bay Area. And you can find us also by Googling Bay Area End-of-Life Doula Alliance.
Great. And Linda?
Yes, I'm Linda Suhr, S-U-H-R, with Autumn of Life Planning. And this is my own service that I started, and I support people who are doing end-of-life planning in all aspects. And I also am an end-of-life doula and support people at the end of life. And my email or my website is autumnoflifeplanning.com. And I'm also affiliated and a founder of Sonoma County End-of-Life Doula Alliance. And that website is socoelda.org. And if you Google doulas in Sonoma County, we pop up. So that's an easy way to find us.
Great. Well, I know that both you are in the Bay Area, and so I know, I think with Sarah, but correct me if I'm wrong, but who mentioned right, the national organization. If you don't mind mentioning that again, if you happen to know the website. If you don't, then I'm sure they could Google it. But tell us about the national organization.
Sure. Yeah, it's NEDA is the National End-of-Life Doula Alliance, and their website is nedaalliance.org. They have a wonderful directory that can point you to local doulas in your area. And I'd also like to call out a group called ENELDA. ENELDA is International End-of-Life Doula Association, and you can reach them at enelda.org. And they too have a directory that will point you to doulas in your area.
Great. Thank you for that. So I'm just trying to, give our listeners just an idea of kind of what to expect. So maybe, either one of you could maybe bring an example or two of situations you've had, and just kind of the experience the family had and the individual, kind of what to expect. Okay. So whoever would like to go.
Well, sure. I can share a story. This is Sarah. I had a client named Diane, and she was the matriarch of her family. She had 4 children, 10 grandchildren, and she had Alzheimer's, end-stage Alzheimer's, bilateral breast cancer, and Parkinson's, and was in fact bedbound. And it was really difficult for her family to adjust to her disease progression and how things had changed for her. She was a dynamic woman, industry leader in children's education, and to see the way in which her end-of-life journey had taken things was difficult. And I think the family did their best to maintain and retain a degree of connection with her, but they needed some support. So I went to work with Diane and her family along with another doula. We often do partner together in pairs. And we worked with the family across what we call, the work of the head and the hands and the heart. So making sure that the advanced planning, everything was tended to, that there was alignment among the adult children around end-of-life wishes, that they were making as her healthcare proxy, trying to have very deliberate conversations around how do you plan for the future and the kinds of decisions that you'll need to make, and how do you make sure those are aligned with Diane's values as we are speaking on her behalf at this stage of her life. And then the hands work was really execution support. When I met them, they were in need of support in identifying the hospices right for their mom and getting the kind of scaffolding circumstances correct around her care. And so I helped to work with them to interview local hospices and onboard that team, and became really connected to her nurse who would visit and the social worker. We all worked together really collaboratively just to keep one another abreast of different changes that were happening. But then there's the heart work, which I think is really where doulas shine. And the grandchildren in particular were really struggling with reconciling how they remembered their grandmother, right? And how she was presenting in the current day. So we decided to do what's called legacy work. We had a legacy evening where we were going to remember their grandmother as they remembered her. And so we worked together with the whole family to devise an evening of recollection and sharing. And it was a beautiful night where the grandchildren divvied up into teams, and one team had worked on all her travels because she'd been an avid traveler, and put together an interactive Google map of all the places she had gone in the world and loaded photos into this virtual environment that people could kind of engage with. And that was their gift to their family. And another group of the children put together an exercise where they strung these beautiful beads, and each bead represented a story that they shared about their grandmother that they all loved. And they shared these stories together while stringing these beads that then became sun catchers that they hung in their grandmother's room. And then the final group of grandchildren, they came together and came up with this idea of having a beautiful box, a memory box, that had different things from their childhood that they remembered about their grandmother. Each box had a cinnamon stick in it because she loved to bake with cinnamon, and an ouchie boo-boo thing, the stuff you put in the freezer when a child falls and hurts himself. And they just had a beautiful evening, and, they all loved Christmas too. So I think we had Christmas in spring. But it was a beautiful evening. And while I sat there working with that family to hold that kind of evening, which relieved a lot of the pressure I think the grandchildren and adult children were feeling, the other doula sat with Diane so we could have a kind of through thread. And then in full ceremony, like I said, with the sun catchers, the grandchildren came together, and we were able to hang those in Diane's room and come and share stories with her. So that's the kind of work that a doula can do.
That's wonderful. When you said you usually work together with another doula, in my mind, I'm thinking, why? But you just explained it. So that's great. That's great. That helps a lot. Good.
Excellent.
Linda, anything come top of mind of a family you've worked with?
Well, yeah, I'm working with someone right now who, when I began, he was very clear-minded. He has Parkinson's, and he has cancer, a slow progressive cancer. But as he was thinking about, he was actually asking me about ways to hasten his death. And that is something that we have information about. But as time has gone by, he has decided not to do that. He actually has a girlfriend now, mm-hmm. and he's in his 80s, and he lives in a facility, and he has a different look on life right now. So what I do is I spend time with him. I come once a week and spend time with him, playing music, having conversations, and talking about serious life and death topics. And I think he has come to a place where he is more comfortable with his process, even though his mind he's not thinking as clearly as he used to, and sometimes his thinking is way out there. And but he is. I see a real comfort with where he is now, and his family is very appreciative of my visits. And when we play music together, and his girlfriend plays music too, we just have such a great time. There's a lot of laughter and love. Now, I know that that's not the situation with everyone, because as Sarah mentioned, people who are really getting close to the end of life, it's a different kind of experience.
Right.
Yeah. But
I would think every situation, there's no two that are the same. Everybody's it's all different. Yeah. That's wonderful.
I think there's something really beautiful about the work of the doula that I think we all practice, the kind of not knowing that child's mind, right? For each client, we just show up with open hearts and are ready to respond to whatever emerges. We don't really have a kind of pre-planned idea of how an engagement's going to work, Frank. It just kind of evolves organically, and we allow it to do that.
Right. I mean, listen, you both are and have to be very caring people and love what you do what you do. But maybe you could just, and we only have time, we only have a couple minutes left, but, what kind of training? Did you go through any additional training, or does this come just naturally for you from your own personal life experience? Is there any accreditation at all in becoming a doula?
Well, I don't know of any doulas who didn't come to being a doula without having some kind of profound experience.
Right.
And for myself, it was my own husband's death and his journey with dementia. And because he'd written a very important paragraph in his health directive about what he would want, or especially what he would not want, if he had dementia, it helped me incredibly to make a very tough decision, but I knew I was honoring his wishes. And in fact, I just would like to say there is a thing called a dementia directive that people should know about. And doulas, one of the big things we do is we educate people about options, and because people don't know what their options are. So, and so I'm getting off on a tangent, but yes, it's not accredited. There isn't a state board or anything like that of doulas, but there are respected training programs around the country. And Sarah and I have both participated in several trainings with different institutions. And so we get, we complete our training, we get a certificate, but there is no governing board like that.
Gotcha. Okay, great. Well, I just want to say to both of you, thank you so much for all you do. It's so needed. When it comes my day, I want to have someone like you by my side. So thank you so much for all you do. And thank you so much for joining us on Boomers today. And we'll have you back in the future. There's, I'm sure, a lot more that we didn't cover. So thank you both.
Thank you, Frank.
Thank you.
And hang in there for a minute after I sign off. You guys can hang in there with me for a minute.
You've been listening to Boomers Today with Frank Sampson. To learn more about today's show, visit boomerstodayradio.com and join us next time for another edition of Boomers Today.